Today, I would like to explore with you a nuanced point I haven't seen discussed yet with respect to the appearances of personal magnetism. To discuss this, I titled today's conversation mind map, Reflections of Being. See, you only desire to know/be who you are. You only desire to know/be who you are in this life. I say know/be not to imply separation, but rather to emphasize the point that they are one. So when it comes to personal magnetism, the nuance point I would like to explore with you today starts with a series of questions. Does a person who appears to be magnetic need to identify with a concept in order to be magnetic? They think they are this and that, and because they are this and that, then they are magnetic, which is clearly a condition. Because what if that condition wasn't there? Does that imply then that they are not magnetic? Does a person who appears to be magnetic need to identify with this or that action first in order to be magnetic? So in other words, do they walk around thinking that they need to do this or that, and then after they do this or that, then they can be magnetic? And also, does a person who appears to be magnetic need to show that they have something, and that means that they are magnetic because they have whatever kind of material possession, a car, a house, money, particular clothes, etc.? Like, do they walk around showing off these material possessions in order to be magnetic? Now, I'm talking about an individual that is naturally magnetic. The fragrance of being is what we can point to and say personal magnetism, which is not based on these conditions. Not because they identified with this or that. Not because they did this or that. Not because they have this or that. Rather, whatever they appear, which we can point to and say, they appear to be identified with this concept, that concept, so that's their identity. Or they appear to take this step or don't take this step, or do this or don't do this, or say this or don't say this. They appear to have this possession or not have this possession. All these things that a person may point to and say, but these are signs of personal magnetism, are actually the natural manifestations of being. Yet the magnetic being is not faking it to prove that they are magnetic. And so, to be very precise, when we talk about the appearances of personal magnetism, it is important to acknowledge that personal magnetism is an appearance. It just appears as personal magnetism. See, there's no conceptual person apart from being that we're trying to identify with that needs to take some sort of action in order to influence or show that we have this or that in order to be magnetic. Do you see how that's conditional? That would also imply separation, trying to be magnetic to attract a specific person. The natural result of being is personal magnetism or attraction. We can point to it. We can point to the appearances and say, this person is being magnetic or they're attractive. It's the natural manifestation of being. People appearing to be magnetically drawn to you. And you are already that. You are that being already. Thus, you are already magnetic. You don't need to do this or that in order to be magnetic. You don't need to have this or that material possession in order to be magnetic. Here's what I mean. So we have on my screen the Robert Dilts logical levels, which I modified. I modified it by putting an I on the top. That I represents you. You are that pure awareness that is prior to the thoughts, emotions, concepts, material possessions, behaviors, actions, or with respect to the Robert Dilts logical levels, you are prior to the environments, the behaviors, which is doing this or that, the capabilities, whatever kind of skills, values and beliefs, identity, and what you imagine yourself to be. You are that pure awareness which is perfect as it is now. And as consciousness is a reality, pure consciousness beyond limitations is bliss. Sat, you exist experiencing consciousness bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Existence consciousness bliss, or truth consciousness bliss. Ananda can be translated into bliss, happiness, joy, peace. In other words, you are fulfilled. You exist already as fulfillment. So if I say Sat Chit Ananda, it could sound like three separate things. These three aspects represent the whole of being. Existence, consciousness, bliss. There it is. You. Existence, consciousness, bliss. I put an I to represent you. Existence, consciousness, bliss. Now, this is why I also say you are love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You are fulfilled. Being is fulfillment. There is no separation. Thus, you being fulfilled naturally manifests the fragrance of being. Love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, which appears as personal magnetism. It appears as people being drawn to you. And people may ask, why are they drawn to you? And they may point to visible signs which they can relate to and say, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. The magnetic individual, if we can point to someone and say they are naturally magnetic, they naturally imagine themselves to be who they are. They do not imagine themselves to be separate from who they are. They know that they are that existence, consciousness, bliss. Now, if we were to define them, we may look at attributes, although they're not trying to identify with these attributes. By that it is meant very specifically is we may point to an individual and create a model like this and say, this represents their identity. They have this attribute, that attribute, and this attribute that they have, this is what makes them attractive. This just happens naturally. All of this is a natural result of being. You naturally appear to embody an identity, yet you know you are not this personal identity. But people may point to you and say, you are this personal identity, and describe you and say, you behave this way, you think this way, you emotionally relate this way. That is why people consider you to be magnetic. Yet those are effects. These are mental concepts. What I'm getting at is all of this happens naturally as you know that you are that pure awareness. You are prior to the thoughts, emotions, behaviors, environments, capabilities, values and beliefs, personal identity, what you imagine yourself to be. As you remain as you are, you experience yourself as that consciousness bliss. Bliss permeates the body. Happiness permeates the body. Peace permeates the body. Love permeates the body. You are fulfilled. You are completely fulfilled. The natural fragrance of fulfillment are all these things. Happiness, peace, joy, bliss, love, natural fragrance, unconditional. It's not like you're saying, oh, I'm going to have a condition in place and then only I can release this fragrance. That doesn't make any sense. You are already that. It naturally appears to emit. It appears that way. It appears as, oh, they're attracted to your fragrance of being. Yet you know that there is no other. Ultimately, there is no other person to attract. Yet it appears this way, which is perfectly fine for how it plays out. It plays out this way. Otherwise, we would not be able to say it plays out this way in a way that we can point to and say attraction or magnetism. So all these things naturally happen. They naturally transform. As you know that you are that pure awareness, you experience in consciousness being the only reality. You experience in consciousness bliss. It is felt in the body. Happiness, peace, fulfillment, joy. It is felt in the body. As it is felt in the body, it transforms everything. It transforms the neural pathways. It transforms the body. Everything appears to naturally transform. You may start to notice that you are in different environments. You appear to be in different environments. So we could say environments appear to be in harmony with you. You appear to behave differently. You're not trying to behave differently in order to be magnetic, as that would imply that there is a person that you are trying to impress. There is no person apart from being. There's only being. It just plays out this way. Same with capabilities. What appears as skill cultivation happens naturally. It naturally unfolds. Now, all of these things, which we can point to conceptually, can say represents the individual's reality. Yet they're not trying to do all these things here. They're happening naturally as a result of being. They're reflections of being. That's what I meant by reflections of being. You are that pure awareness which is prior to the thoughts, emotions, environments, behaviors, capabilities, values and beliefs, personal identity, and who you imagine yourself to be. You can imagine yourself to be anything. You can imagine yourself to be limited if you would like. You can imagine yourself to be imperfect if you would like. Yet that's illusory. As you know that pure awareness, which is you, that still I am presence is perfection, is literally beyond limitations. And knowing who you are, bliss, joy, peace, happiness, love, knowing that you are fulfilled, I am fulfilled, naturally permeates the body and mind. By that it is meant you naturally imagine yourself to be what that perfection looks like. You naturally imagine yourself to be. If you imagine yourself to be, you naturally imagine yourself to be. You don't try to imagine yourself to be. It naturally happens. You imagine yourself to be. All of these things naturally happen, including the physical appearances of personal magnetism. So you are already that. You are pure awareness experiencing consciousness bliss. Your real nature is that. Your true nature is that. Satchit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. As you know who you are, and you know who you are as who is, witnessing this conversation here unconditionally. Unconditional love thus, happiness thus, peace thus, bliss thus, fulfillment thus. That is you. So how are you not perfect then? How are you limited then? That is you. Being as you are, abiding as you are, as you know you are that pure awareness. You witness everything happening spontaneously, including what appears as personal magnetism, including what you do or don't do. Everything happens spontaneously. It naturally arises. As mentioned, as you know yourself to be, that pure awareness which is perfect as it is now, beyond limitations, beyond limited concepts, you can imagine yourself to be who you are, because that is abstract. It is that abstract knowledge. You are that pure awareness. Yet you have the two gifts, as stated in the Hermetica. Two gifts were bestowed upon humanity. They were mind and speech, equal to immortality. So you know that pure awareness is that immortality, as it is that eternal, everlasting, infinite peace of God. As it states in the Bible, Exodus 3:14. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. Thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. So you are that pure awareness, that still I am presence, witnessing all these things appear to be in harmony. And you don't actually do this or that in order to be magnetic. You don't identify with this or that limited conceptual identity in order to be magnetic. You don't actually own any material possession in order to be magnetic. You are that pure awareness, knowing your real nature as consciousness bliss. And all of these things here appear to transform. Conceptually, we can point to all of these things and say, this is what makes up a magnetic person. Although, that might not be completely accurate. Does a magnetic person need to have a particular amount of money in their bank account in order to be magnetic? Does a magnetic person need to drive this or that car in order to be magnetic? Have you not seen people that don't drive this or that car or live in this or that house and they are magnetic? Although we may point to these kinds of appearances and form conclusions in mind, suggesting that that absolutely means that they are magnetic. It is just a concept. Who are you? That is the principal fact that manifests as personal magnetism, all these things. Magnetism, or the appearances of magnetism, I say that again. Why do I say appearances of personal magnetism? Magnetic individual is not trying to be magnetic. They know that they are that. So unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment permeate mind, permeate body, not for this or that reason externally. You can only experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment within. And although you may associate it to a concept, or associate it to an action, or associate it to a material possession, it is not dependent on these things. How do you know it's not dependent on these things? Because where do you experience the love, the happiness, the peace, the bliss, the fulfillment? You can honestly say that you experience it within. You can honestly say that you are the source of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Thus, knowing that you are that which is the source of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. The next question worth exploring is, do you need a material possession in order to be there, in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment? Do you need to identify with this or that concept in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment? Do you need to do this or that in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment? If there is a person identified with these kinds of conditions, then they may believe that these conditions, which is an illusory person, not real. That person is not real. How do you know it's not real? In the silence, that person is non-existent. Those thoughts do not appear that you need to do this or that in order to be magnetic, that you need to have this or that in order to be magnetic, that you need to think this or that in order to be magnetic. Those things spontaneously arise. If you think, you really think for yourself. If you do something or don't do something, it naturally happens in flow. All these things happen not because you're trying to do these things or have these things or conceptualize these things in order to be love, happiness, in order to experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. By doing nothing in the silence, simply being in the silence, with none of these thoughts appearing in mind, love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment permeate mind, permeate body for no reason. So we can honestly say that existence is enough. Presence is enough. Being is enough. So we see how illusory it is then to say that it's because of a concept, because of an action, because of a material possession. It is not dependent upon these things. Certainly, you can experience it with doing this or that. For example, when I say I love snowboarding, I experience happiness with snowboarding. I experience joy with snowboarding. I feel bliss while I'm snowboarding. What I mean very specifically is I experience joy, love, happiness, bliss with it, not because of it. If it was because of it, right now where I live, there's no snowboarding. I would think that I was lacking something. I would think that I cannot be happy. I cannot be at peace. I cannot be fulfilled. That is just a condition placed upon consciousness, which does not need to be there. As you are that pure awareness experiencing consciousness bliss, it is only the conditions in mind that distort reality, which is perfect as it is now. As you are perfect as you are now, it naturally manifests as all these things. So does a magnetic being then say, I don't have this or that, therefore I cannot be love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, or I cannot be happy, or I cannot be at peace, or I cannot be fulfilled? Or does magnetic being naturally appear to emanate that joy, that happiness, that peace, that love, that fulfillment, which they are, that pure consciousness, witnessed by pure awareness, as stated in Genesis 1:3. And God said, God's name is I Am in the Bible. And God said, let there be light. That light is pure consciousness. So that's what it is meant by I am pure awareness, witnessing pure consciousness bliss. Not because of this or that, it just appears that way. Just appears that way. So magnetism is not something you try to acquire. It's the natural fragrance of who you already are. Trying to be magnetic in order to get this or that implies that you are not. It suggests that you need to do this or that in order to be magnetic, which is a concept. Magnetism is a concept. We point to it as human beings and call it magnetism. Yet what is happening behind the scenes, we could say, is the natural fragrance of being results in all these things added onto you, as stated in the Bible. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be added unto you. So again, the nuance point is that you are already that. You are that pure awareness, witnessing consciousness bliss, bliss consciousness. Or as mentioned, Ananda can also be translated to peace or joy or happiness or bliss. As you experience unconditional bliss, happiness, joy, peace for no reason, those conditions in mind fall away. They are so clearly known to not be real. And then what naturally manifests, having released identification to these particular beliefs in mind, they just fall away, just dissolve by knowing who you are. And you don't need to do this or that to know who you are. You could do nothing to know who you are. Drop all concepts, drop all identification. What remains? What remains is you as that pure awareness. As you remain as you are, what naturally permeates the body is bliss, is happiness, is peace. Thus you know that you are fulfilled. Congratulations. Awareness of consciousness bliss. So as mentioned, Ananda may be translated into bliss, happiness, peace, fulfillment. And I like to say love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, as this is what the individual is desiring. As I mentioned, you only desire to know/be who you are, or you could say as you are. That is it. And by knowing who you are and being as you are, the natural fragrance of it is what we can point to and say personal magnetism. So what does it look like? Well, it can look like this. You're out and about, you're doing some things, you see someone, you walk over, you start a conversation with them. The conversation flows in wonderful harmony. prior to the individual I inquiring into the source being. In other words, prior to knowing who is, the individual in mind might have thought in terms of separation. Resistance to starting the conversation with this person because they think that there's a separate person. They need to do things or think things or behave in or have whatever material possessions, etc., first in order to start a conversation with them. And if they didn't have those things, if they didn't identify with some kind of limited concept or whatever, then this person would not accept them the way they are, which is illusory. There's only being. So no shame, no condemnation. Inquire into the source of I. I go within to realize that I am in the silence. And what naturally emerges in the silence is that unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment that permeates the body. And naturally and spontaneously, they start the conversation with the person. They saw the individual that they felt inspired to start a conversation with. They walk over, they start the conversation flows. They don't shame and condemn themselves. They don't shame and condemn the other person prior, during, and after the conversation. Because that would imply that there is a problem. There is no problem. You are that pure awareness. Thus, they are that pure awareness which is experiencing consciousness bliss, experiencing consciousness bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. So that's an example of the natural result of knowing who you are. And you do nothing to know who you are. You know that you are that pure awareness, witnessing unconditionally, or we could say unconditionally loving, peacefully witnessing this conversation happening. We are having a conversation together. We are being together. So that's why I titled the mind map also, Reflections of Being. We are being together here. And this is a reflection of being. You are that pure awareness, witnessing the reflections of being. In consciousness as bliss, as peace, as love, as happiness. And what about if there was thoughts in mind that suggest otherwise? What about thoughts? What about emotions? What about actions? Well, as I had mentioned, as you know that you are, thoughts naturally arise from the premise of truth. No thoughts that imply separation. If you think, you really think for yourself. Number two is emotions arise and subside naturally. You do nothing to let them be. Letting it be or letting them go or any kind of concept is just a concept that points to what is behind or prior to, which is perfect as it is now, which is you. That pure awareness, lovingly witnessing the emotions arise and subside. Lovingly witnessing the thoughts of harmony appearing in mind. If there's thoughts of disharmony, you know who you are and thus do not identify with thoughts of disharmony. Thoughts that suggest lack of perfection, lack of being already who you are, lack of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment are illusory to you. You do not conform, as stated in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, perfect, and pleasing will. That could sound like a thing to do. Do not conform. Now it's time to not conform. Now it's time to let go. Now it's time to let be. Now it's time to surrender. That could sound like a bunch of things that you need to add to your task list now. Another thing to do. Do not conform means know who you are. That is beyond conformity. You do not conform. Who you are is beyond conformity. You are that pure awareness beyond conformity. You cannot conform. It's illusory to think that who you are can conform. All of this appears to transform. The renewing of the mind happens. As I discussed this with the Robert Dilts logical levels to articulate it, it happens. Body appears to transform or renew. Mind appears to transform, renew. Emotions arise and subside. Body flows naturally. Everything happens naturally, spontaneously. We can point to an individual that lives this way and say, oh, they are magnetic. They are not controlled by their emotions. They are not being governed by limited thoughts. Body just flows naturally. They accept themselves the way they are. It's not because they drive this or that car. As a matter of fact, I've seen them with or without the car. They are who they are. There's no need for approval, validation, or confirmation of being. Everything that appears to be added onto them as a natural fragrance, and one individual's way is not better than another individual's way, as there's only being. Ultimately, there's only God playing all roles. Prove it. By not identifying. Not identifying. Do nothing means not identifying. Do not conform means do not identify. Again, that could sound like a thing to do. Do not conform, do not identify. It means know who you are beyond conformity. You are that already, which never conforms. And it's not a spiteful thing. It's not like you're saying, I'm not going to conform out of spite. That's illusory. You do not conform. You effortlessly thus not conform. You are that pure awareness. And by not conforming, as in you do not conform, as you know who you are, you know what is beyond these illusory conformity beliefs in mind. What naturally emanates is the fragrance of being. Consciousness bliss. Bliss permeates the mind and thus renews the mind. Love permeates the mind and thus renews the mind. Happiness permeates the mind and renews the mind. Peace permeates the mind and renews the mind. And the manifestation of that in individual relationships, in people appearing to be in harmony, is what we can point to and say, oh, that's magnetic. That's attractive. That's personal magnetism. And so again, the nuanced point, how illusory this is when we ask these questions. Does a person who appears to be magnetic need to identify with a concept first in order to be magnetic? Does a person who appears to be magnetic need to identify with an action in order to be magnetic? And why I say these things is the person may then go looking for this concept, that concept, or whatever. You are already that beyond concepts. You are that pure awareness beyond concepts, knowing yourself to be in consciousness as bliss. Simply put, you know yourself to be consciousness bliss or consciousness happiness, as consciousness is the only reality. It appears as personal magnetism, yes. That we can honestly say. We can point to it and conceptualize it as magnetism, being magnetic, which is perfectly fine. And the other question, does a person who appears to be magnetic need to show what they have in order to be magnetic? Those are conditions. Actually, you could do nothing to be magnetic, and that is what we can call the highest form of personal magnetism. Formlessness. No form. Existence is enough. Presence is enough. Being is enough. And as you are being, as you are existence, as you are present, you know that you are enough. That is enough. It appears as the individual transmitting personal magnetism frequencies or vibrations, or however you want to look at it, in the silence by doing nothing, by simply existing. That is the natural result. The appearances of it is the natural result of releasing these conditions, that you need to do this or that, identify with this or that, show off or have this or that first in order to be magnetic. All of these things happen naturally in flow. As you know who you are, that pure awareness that is witnessing the flow of life, which is pure consciousness bliss, consciousness happiness appearing as flow. Does water resist the flow? We can say nothing can resist magnetic being. And it's not like you're looking around and saying, okay, checking to see if this person is resisting you or not. Those thoughts do not appear in mind. They're illusory. That would imply that there's a person that you are doing this for, which is again trying. You could stop trying. Just be. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto suggestion to further encourage. You could say, I know that I am that pure awareness experiencing consciousness bliss as an individual, appearing to be in harmony with all individuals, all environments. Thus, everything appears to be in harmony with me. Everything appears to be added on to me in what I can call personal magnetism, which is the natural result of being who I am. As a result of knowing who I am, I can just be as I am, witnessing all these things in perfect harmony, with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.